everybody, and welcome to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World. Leading Entrepreneurs of the World is one of the most comprehensive global entrepreneurial platforms and features entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders presenting on cutting-edge topics and the latest industry developments. Our goal is to provide business and entrepreneurial communities with a window into the minds of those who are shaping the future of the world. Today, we are very happy to welcome leading global entrepreneur Kevin Neary. Kevin Neary is the founder and CEO at Orcawise, providing scaling companies with a new layer of AI called buying signals to power marketing campaigns. Startup founders and marketing teams can access industry-specific information with the Orcawise API keys, which delivers signals daily from over 300 million data sources. The Orcawise team has headquartered in Dublin with offices in New York and London, serving clients in SaaS, e-commerce, marketplaces, healthtech, and greentech. Kevin Neary is an entrepreneur and speaker. Kevin started and failed and succeeded many times. And having presented to and mentored over 5,000 delegates, he discovered the three characteristics for entrepreneurial success, what separates the top 10%. On this webinar, he shares entertaining stories about what causes so many startups to fail and how you can avoid them. Kevin, so great to have you with us today. I'm excited to hear your presentation about what separates the top 10%. I think that's really something. There's a lot of good. We need some more great in the business world. So thanks for coming and helping us out with that today.
I know I said yes, but now I'm not sure. I have to go to the board. That's what the director of a global company said to me the morning I walked into his office to sign the contract. And he's sitting there in his big leather chair with a cup of steaming coffee waiting for me. And I remember thinking as I sat down, I did not come here for coffee. Where is the contract? You see, this guy, Jack, was meant to be my first customer. My team and I are building a global AI engine to match resumes and job specs in the HR industry and do so at a fraction of the cost. Jack is a leader of a company and he wants to buy the product and roll it out globally. Perfect scenario for a startup. Every week I would drop by Jack's office with updates on product development, and every week he would say how much he liked it. In fact, one day he said to me, Kevin, I like this so much, I'm going to jump ship and come on board with you guys when it's ready. But when it came down to it, all I can remember is, I know I said yes, but now I'm not sure. I have to go to the board. And that's what I want to talk to you today about, ladies and gentlemen. That is a challenge that many entrepreneurs face. Stories like that are rampant in the startup world. That is the reasons that startups fail. And I want to share with you the three things that separate the top 10% of startups, the top 10% of entrepreneurs, those who ultimately always succeed. But first, let's go back to Jack for a minute. And I said, Jack, that's BS, going to the board. Why won't you sign the contract? And at this stage, he's lying back in his chair and he's become a diminutive figure and he looks really nervous. And he goes, Kevin, I'm not sure. What do you mean you're not sure, Jack? We've worked on this for 3 months. You said you were going to buy the product. He said, yeah, and I want the product. I want the cost savings. I want the innovation. I want the technology. I want you. I like you. I like your team. But I'm not sure about something. But how can you be not sure at this 11th hour? And he goes, well, you asked me to sign a contract and something has come into my mind now. I said, Jack, this is absolutely crazy. What are you talking about? He said, I like the technology, but there's a human side to this that I did not think about before. A human side? What are you talking about? See, the technology is great, and you're going to disrupt this industry, and you're going to disrupt thousands of jobs. And I'm not sure I want to be part of that. I certainly don't want to go first. And I know if I take this to the board, they're probably going to think the same thing. I said, Jack, you can't say this at the 11th hour. This is my startup. Unless we have you as the first customer, we're going to fail. He said, I know, Kevin, I'm sorry, but there's nothing that I can do. I was so angry. I walked out of there and I thought, Mike Tyson came to mind when he said, everybody's got a plan until you get a punch in the face. I learned two things that day. Number one, you do not know what your customer is thinking until you ask them to write a check. And the message is, ask your customer for money early and ask your customer for money often. And the other thing I learned was product market fit and time to market. It doesn't matter how good your technology is, how good your shiny new toy is, unless the time is right. This was 2016 in August, and Jack was not ready for disruption. And we discovered that the remainder of the industry was not ready either. And we all know as entrepreneurs that there are thousands of startups and thousands of tools out there stuck on the runways around the world that cannot be launched because the time is right. And in many cases, the time will never be right. So I want to take you on a journey today and share with you a few stories about what separates the top 10%. Now, we've all heard the crazy statistic that 90% of startups fail. Now, I don't know where that number's come from, but it's the number we've got. And we've all heard of the list of reasons why startups fail. No market, poor management, run out of money, problems with the product. And all of that is BS. That's their excuses. Because if there's no market, why would you set up in the first place? So let's move away from that and let's look at the three characteristics of entrepreneurs that guarantee success every time. Number one is no regrets. The top entrepreneurs make sure they never have any regrets. Number two is pay the price. The leading entrepreneurs know there is a price to be paid. It's like making a down payment. And number three, mind games. The top entrepreneurs are top performers and their teams are top performers. They know how to play mind games. So regrets. Regret scares me, and it should scare you too. And there's nothing more scary than listening to somebody in their 80s and their 90s talking about what might have been. I remember when I graduated college, I dropped by my grandma's house. And the culture in our family is if the grandma summons you, something good is about to befall you. Maybe some presents or some cash, much needed after 4 years in college. And I'm sitting in the room with her and she's very old and very frail. And I'm scanning the room looking around for maybe some evidence of presents or maybe an envelope. But alas, I discover that I'm not getting anything today. But as the afternoon wore on and we were chatting, I realized I was getting a takeaway. She gave me a list of things to do with my life, like continue in college, live in New York, set up a business, buy property. And I walked out of there totally invigorated with this list of things to do on top of what I was already going to do with my life. And I never thought about that day again until I encountered Jack. Until we were stuck there with this startup that we could not get off the runway because of Jack's decision. What were we going to do? And I wanted it that we would have no regrets. And thankfully I had built a team who had the same mindset. So we decided we would not close the startup down, we would do a pivot. And every entrepreneur must be an expert at doing pivots because the world is changing so quickly. We must be changing all the time and we must know how to change. And how do you salvage a startup that's about to close down? Well, you look at the technology. What assets have you got? And can you take it in a different direction? So last time we went in the direction of HR, that was not ready for disruption. And something was calling me now in the direction of marketing. Why? Maybe because marketeers are open, they're easy to talk to, they love innovation. So we take our AI engine and we turn it into a marketing tool. And what we do nowadays is that we scan the market for buying signals, we process those signals, and then we sell them on to scaling companies and marketeers. And that business is working really well. In fact, that is a better business now than the one that might have been. Sometimes things happen for a reason. Never ceases to amaze me why people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, how they have regrets, how they say things like, gosh, if only I were 10 years younger, or if only I had investment, or if only I had a management team, or if only I had this, if only I had that. And really, if you're in your 40s, you've still got 40 years to do the thing you really want to do. If you're in your 50s, you've still got 30 or 40 years to do the thing you really want to do. People have regrets, and the number one regret I encounter from entrepreneurs is that they do not listen to their mentors. And there are whole lists of regrets out there, but one that circumvents every regret is listening to your mentor. So if you want to have no regrets, listen to your mentor, listen to your grandma. The second characteristic of entrepreneurs that are in the top percent is that they pay a price, and that they know that they must pay that price. It's like a down payment on being an entrepreneur. Steve Jobs had a very famous quote: listen to what your heart and intuition is saying, because somehow it knows what you truly want to become. And you should do that. But if you do that, you're going to pay a price, because almost certainly you're going to take a chance. And if you take a chance, there is a good chance you might lose money. If you go on that journey, the people around you may not want to go with you. So you may lose family, you may lose friends. Certainly, you're going to lose some sleep. I remember last time I was on holidays was in 2019. We went to Tuscany. And every evening, we would have dinner at 7 p.m. And before dinner, I would always go for a walk. And I would take this path, and it's 1 mile long. And as I came back to the hotel, I would turn left up toward the hotel. But I always noticed that there was a dirt track going to the right as well. And I was often curious what was down there, but I would never go. You don't want to miss dinner at 7 in Tuscany, in the Tuscan sun. But one evening I was coming and something compelled me to go down the dirt track and to miss dinner. And I walked for half a mile on rough terrain. And then I came to some bushes and trees and briars, and it was a really, really rough area. And I did not want to go in there because it looked really angry. But then I spotted at the other side that there was something that looked like a ruin of a building. And I was curious about that. So I decided to pay the price. I would drag myself through the briars and the bushes, and then I had to jump a wall and overcome this wall to get to the other side. And now I'm in front of what I thought was a ruin, but it turned out to be an annex to a big private estate that I had somehow broken into. And there was a dog there and a man. Thankfully, they were friendly. Giovanni came forward. He spoke perfect English, and he said that he had worked all over New York and United Kingdom when he was young in the hospitality sector. And then he returned to Tuscany, and he met a young lady who was the daughter of the owner of the vineyard, and now he's the owner of the vineyard. He was very proud of his entrepreneurial story. But we were chatting, and I said, Giovanni, I've been coming here for many, many years, and we know all the restaurants in the area. And in 2 days' time on Friday, it's my girlfriend's birthday. It's a special birthday, and I don't know anywhere different that I can take her. And he gets on the phone and he books a table for two at a restaurant called Al Forno, Alforno. I want to recommend it to you. And it was 1 hour's drive from Siena in Tuscany. And it was well worth the drive. It was terrace seating overlooking the Tuscan hills. But it got better because of Giovanni, we got to meet the management of this restaurant. And they explained that it was a private, exclusive estate, and it was a brilliant place to have private, exclusive business events. And that was great. Did not think much about that at the time, but now as we come out of the pandemic and people are looking for alternative to Zooms, suddenly private, exclusive events are a really big business. And now private, exclusive events has become a new revenue stream for my business. And we're running an event in March at this Alfano restaurant in Tuscany. That would never have happened unless I went down that path that I did not want to go down, if I did not take that chance and follow my instincts. The final point is playing mind games. Entrepreneurs must play mind games. Entrepreneurs must be high performance teams to be in the top 10%. I like to follow sport, New York Giants, the Jets, the Rams, all of these top performing teams. In England, Manchester United. I was reading somewhere that if Manchester United win the Champions League, which is the biggest soccer competition in the world, they will earn £50 million. Now think about the level of brand that Manchester United is. Think about the team they have, the coaches, and the level of performance, the mindset of these players that score these goals week in, week out. That is an incredible level of performance, consistent, for £50 million. Now think about the world of startups. We regularly hear about exits of $50 million, £50 million, €50 million, 100 million, 200 million. We regularly hear about investments, A series, B series, 50, 100, 200 million. We even hear about unicorns, 1 billion. But we don't very much hear about performance of the teams inside these organizations. And I bet you that those startups that are constantly failing do not have a high performance culture. Most of them simply set up a business, write a business plan, and hope for the best. And some of them think they might become unicorns. But if you want to have a high performance culture, you've got to set about and do it. For me, my mentor said to me, Kevin, you've got good ambition, but you need to improve your interpersonal skills. You need to improve your public speaking. And that was a euphemism for sure. And I went to Toastmasters once and I was 15 minutes early and I went for a coffee next door. Next time I looked at my watch, 2.5 hours had gone by. I had somehow figured out a way not to speak. But then I thought, I got to overcome this issue. And I decided, what is the most difficult thing I could do in the world that if I overcome it, I will overcome my fear of speaking? And I decided that it would be stand-up comedy. That's meant to be really tough, isn't it? So I go to comedy school, and to graduate comedy school, you've got to do a live performance in front of a paying audience. And I somehow managed to come through that and deliver the performance, and it was fine. But I didn't feel that I had done enough, because what I discovered was that stand-up comics are rehearsed. I used to think that they were spontaneous. They're rehearsed, and they deliver a performance. And I thought, maybe I have not done enough to be a good speaker. What is more difficult than stand-up comedy? Improvisation, long-form improvisation, where a member of the audience puts out a keyword and you take the keyword and on the spot, you've got to create a 3-minute monologue. And then you've got to bring your team around you and together you've got to produce, direct and deliver a performance impromptu. That's really, really difficult. So I did that for 3 years and every Saturday night we would do a live performance, and then I figured, well, now I've overcome my fear of speaking. It took a lot of hard work to do that. But what are the skills deficits in you as an entrepreneur? What about your team? You might have a team of 3 to 5 people, and each one of them have a skills deficit. Or maybe you've got two deficits each. So maybe now there are 20 deficits on your team. Imagine if you go through a proper program of correcting those deficits. What level of performance can you get to over a 2 or 3 year period? Because at the end of the day, if you want to be in the top 10% of entrepreneurs, you've got to be performing like Man United. There is no difference between sport and business. In fact, I would say that business might even be more difficult. There's more of it, right? So I would like to invite you to have a coffee with me. The coffee is on me. I'm CEO at Orcawise. We help startups scale, and I'm always available to talk. Thank you, Jonathan.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Everybody should really have been taking notes there, because that's some incredible feedback and advice for entrepreneurs. And I think everybody focuses on that first part. You're right. The business plan and the, okay, here's the idea, and that's the most fun part of any startup, right? But when it comes to that performance part and kind of let's call it rectifying some of those things, bad habits that entrepreneurs tend to pick up, and sometimes we pick them up in the corporate world. What is your strategy or recommendation for people to go through that process of self-exploration, being honest with yourself on your deficiencies, and then like you did, finding those ways to overcome? Where should an entrepreneur start in that self-evaluation process?
Yeah, Jonathan, that's a great question. And if I ask myself, where did I start? I started like those entrepreneurs you described. It's a romantic idea. I put a business plan together, and it will all happen. And honestly, I did not know that there was a starting point for self-correction and going in a new direction. It was purely trial and error. But going back to the point I said earlier about talking to customers and asking them for validation, that used to be a good thing to do, to talk to your customers. But now it's mandatory that you ask them for money, because it's only when you ask them for money that you actually really know what's going on. And I think if you do that process, you're going to get an insight into, well, how good your business is and how good your product is. And usually you're going to get bad news. You're going to get a punch in the face, like Mike Tyson said. And then you're going to start evaluating yourself and start looking at what's going on. And most importantly, you're going to start evaluating your team. And the team needs to be of a mindset that they are coachable, that they will accept the evaluation. I think one of the most incredible things that entrepreneurs have is that they do listen, and that they are coachable, and that they will take on board information quite easily. There's nothing worse than trying to work with somebody, Jonathan, as you know, and they know everything and they don't want to be coached, and they're simply not coachable. So I think it's very important that you put a team together that want to learn, and at the outset they know that they have to learn. They may not know what they need to learn, but if you put yourself out there at the coalface, in a commercial sense, asking for money, you're going to learn pretty quickly, I think, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. That's excellent advice. I think, more entrepreneurs probably need to be more self-aware, for sure. One thing we're probably not good at is doing that. But in terms of maybe more in line with what you all do with Orcawise, data is rapidly changing, and we're seeing, I feel like it's every day, something else with privacy, something else with some other application requesting data in certain ways, or governments getting involved. It's just seems like such an incredibly changing sphere to be in. Where, I guess this might be a two-part question. Where do you kind of see data? I would say just in the next year or two. I don't even think we could ask 5 years, because who knows? And then how are you able to manage kind of that shift in how data and privacy are all working together, both from a leadership standpoint, but then I guess as a team as well at Orcawise?
Yeah, it's where it's going to be in 1 year time is probably a very good question, because one year time now is like 20 years, 5 years ago. The rate of change is absolutely phenomenal. Where we're going with data in the context of what we do at Orcawise is that we want to identify all the buying signals in the world. So we need to plug into all the data sources in the world. And the problem is that they're growing exponentially every day. Now that's a good thing. That's creating demand for what we do, of course. But the rate of change has to be managed with some level of focus. So our focus is that we will collect the data in real time when it happens. Now that's a very lofty aspiration, but it does give us a goal to get to that won't pass in 1 year or 2 years. It might take 10 years to get there. And incrementally, we will get better at doing that. And I think it's very important that we have that lofty goal that's realistic as well, because it keeps us on a path and it keeps our team focused. And it lets our customers know where we're going and that we have a future and that we can bring our customers with us to achieve that goal. With regards to privacy, I mean, it's such an important point, and our head office is in Europe, in Dublin, where privacy is a really topical thing. And the question is, how do you manage privacy in relation to your data goals and your business? And the way we think of it is, privacy is front and center all the time. Now, it has become sort of accepted that privacy is baked in the cake, so to speak. So every data business must be privacy driven and privacy oriented. And that's the way we are. And we tend to rely on academic institutions and research institutions who are really good at privacy and who have their fingers on the pulse as regards the future of privacy. And we rely on those scientists a lot in those academic organizations to give us direction on what we should be doing with privacy. But in terms of our customers, we put privacy front and center. It's part of our narrative. And I think if it's part of the narrative of the business and you're working towards that, then the expectation is that everything you do and whatever innovation you might work with, or however far afield you're pulling data in from, that may be foreign data if you like, that if your company culture is that you are privacy centric, then people can rest assured that you're doing a good job as far as data and privacy is concerned. Jonathan?
Sure. Absolutely. I think, it does, as you say, it's kind of baked in the cake. It goes without saying, topical, I would say worldwide right now, for sure. And it's an interesting conversation being on both sides. I'm sure you have those conversations that are on the data side with how you're attempting to actually, help consumers through data, really. And then on the other side, consumers feel exposed oftentimes by the data available. So it's an interesting balance. One more question I wanted to ask: when you talked about pivoting, and you talked about, kind of going into a little bit with the events now as we're coming out of coronavirus, somewhat. I'm not sure that's ever going to be fully true. But in that pivot, when an entrepreneur, and this does happen all the time, whenever you start any kind of business, you have to be able to pivot, like you said. But how would you recommend, having made some successful pivots, to an entrepreneur that's facing maybe a forked path where there are maybe multiple pivots that they could look at doing, and how should they choose maybe that right one? You talked about some of that gut feeling, but is there a process in a layered on top of that gut feeling to choosing that? You never know if it's the right path until it's done, but maybe the best case scenario for that pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question, and I think about it, if you're in a situation whereby you need to do a pivot, you've probably got a car crash and you've got some wreckage, and you need to figure out, is there anything in that wreckage that I can salvage to go in a different direction? And so I would be very conscious of the investors that brought us to this point, and the fact that they might lose their money, and I'm really keen to make sure we can salvage something for them. And also the team that got us to this point, and what do they want to do. I think those two ingredients are really important. So there's a wreckage there, and there's something to be salvaged from that, and let's take stock of what we've got. So really we take stock of what we got, and in our case it was, we have an AI engine, and we have a team that's very good, and we have a team that don't want to give up, and we have a team that really want to pivot, and we have a team that want no regrets, like we said. So that's taking stock of what we have. And then our thought process was, after that, was what went wrong in the previous thing. So it was basically that it was the HR industry, it was too early to disrupt that industry. And we were taking stock of what we have. So what industry might accept that level of disruption now? And we came with marketing. And we also came with marketing because it was a cultural shift for us, because we were in the HR industry, which is very conservative. And it's quite right that HR is conservative, but it is very conservative. But we wanted something different that gave us a different cultural outlook, and sales and marketing was that. It was very open, very honest, very communicative, and very open to disruption. Because, you know, you're doing a pivot, so next time you got to get something right, don't you? You don't want to be doing another pivot in 6 months or 1 year. So my thoughts on it was, in our context, was let's make sure we learned everything that we could, and let's sure we get a win next time. And we looked very carefully at the marketing industry, and we could see that that win was coming. And like I said, we started asking our customers for money straight away up front, and we got paid at every stage of the sales that we were working in. If we were doing pilots, we wanted to get paid. If we were doing trials, we wanted some level of commitment. And when we eventually sold our products to them, of course, we're getting paid for that anyway. So yeah, that's my thought on it. Honestly, Jonathan, different organizations will have different objectives, and depending on the level of investors that have come in, they're going to have a say in what the pivot should look like as well. I also think stuff like the age of the entrepreneurs, what age are they? Can they handle another disaster? Or if they're older, then maybe they can't. Lots of things like that. And the rate of technology change is very important as well. So you talked about the data industry and the rate that that's changing. You can still do a lot of stuff in the data industry that's innovative because of the level of change that's going on. But if perhaps you're in another industry that's beginning to plateau in terms of its innovation and upward curve, then maybe you cannot do much inside that particular industry. It may have matured. So it's quite right that you take all of these things into account. And personally, I believe that we need to be in a position to pivot at any point in time, given the level of risk that's out there and the level of change that's going on in technology.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. We really appreciate you coming on today. Fantastic presentation. I think that this is the type of stuff that everybody should listen to and learn from. Experience is a great teacher, but I'll tell you, when you can leverage somebody else's experience, that helps out a lot. And it's definitely something that every entrepreneur needs to be involved with in that process, right? Again, appreciate you coming on, Kevin, spending some of your time with us, and really appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye.